Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, standing around like a crazy person in the main concourse of Fiserv Forum here in Milwaukee. Purdue is here, obviously, to play Yale tomorrow to open NCAA Tournament play. I decided, since some of you are gluttons for punishment, that I would do a rap video for every day I'm here at the NCAA Tournament. So that's precisely what this is. I have been meandering around Fiserv Forum here, looking for somewhere ideal to do this. The court is occupied by Cornell, who's doing their open practice right now. I found a perfect spot to do this overlooking the court out here. Music's too loud. Can't do it there, so here I am in the main concourse. Figured I would just talk about the day here in Milwaukee a little bit, talk about the game tomorrow, talk about whatever comes to mind. So today was basically the day where the teams have their press conferences, say a bunch of things that mean nothing, come out, have their open practice, do nothing that means anything, and people like me sit there and cobble it all together, and that's it. That is an increasingly cynical view of the NCAA Tournament's media obligations, for sure, but it's kind of what it is. I sat by the entrance all day long to the press conference area. I listened to every word said in every press conference, and I am literally drowning in cliches right now. Between controlling what we can control, between our focus being on this opponent, all of the greatest hits came out today in full force, and I have lost I don't know how many points off my IQ, and there wasn't a whole lot of room for subtraction there in the first place. Anyway, I will tell you this. I thought Purdue was the most interesting press conference. I thought their players said interesting things. I thought, for those of you who are the body language interpreters out there, and you try to read between the lines on nonverbal cues and body language and things like that in terms of looseness and readiness to play, I thought Purdue looked pretty relaxed. The three guys up there seemed very positive, very much like a team that was enjoying the moment and not being suffocated by the moment, if that makes any sense. Insofar as you can actually tell from the highly scripted, highly choreographed sort of environment these press conferences occur in, the reason the NCAA needs to preserve the open locker room for media once COVID is over. That is not an issue that you worry about, but probably should, because what affects us affects our readers, and you are the readers. In this case, the viewer, but normally the reader. Just a little bit about Yale here. I think obviously Purdue has massive advantages from a talent perspective, from an ability perspective, but that is the case in every round one game, virtually in the NCAA tournament, and you know how the NCAA tournament tends to go. Crazy things happen. I think the biggest thing about this game, or the two biggest things about this game, tomorrow, I had some notes written down here and my phone keeps going to sleep. Yes, I do take notes. They're very comprehensive, they're very detailed, and they are just fascinating. I think, people look at Purdue like they are gigantic, because they are gigantic. But people look at Purdue like being gigantic alone is going to win you games. I think when you look at non-conference play, things are probably harder on Ross-Ade and Trevion Williams in non-conference play than they are in Big Ten play. Now, it's not as physical, so things are there's different kinds of better. I think Big Ten play is more physical. I think you have to exert yourself a little bit more. But in non-conference play, when you're Ross-Ade and you're getting guarded by a guy who's 6'8" and 220 pounds, and that guy's going to pull the chair out from under you, or as soon as you back into him, he's going to fall down, or because he's so hopelessly overwhelmed, he's going to call in three of his best friends, and they're all going to be holding onto your legs while you're trying to go into a post move. All their hands are down at your knees, so when you dribble, you have 9 hands, kind of going for the ball. Wait a minute. Hold on. 3 people count the ball handler's hands. I don't know where I got 9 hands. Okay, somebody in that mix has 3 arms. You get my point, is things are a little bit more complicated when people have to throw junk defense at you and people have to overcompensate for their lack of size. I think tomorrow is the classic example of that. Yale is going to be guarding guys. Yale is going to be guarding Zach Edey with players who are. Does Purdue even have a little bit bigger than Ethan Morton? We'll put it that way. Their starting center is 6'7", 215. I don't think Yale's front court has the offensive skill because I haven't seen it in their body of work, which means me looking at their stats. Admittedly, I don't think those guys have really the capability to drag those guys away from the basket and shoot threes over them or drive past them. I think they can drive a little bit, but I don't think Yale's got shooters in their front court. So I think the matchup advantage doesn't become a matchup disadvantage as much for Purdue defensively as it should be an advantage offensively. And that's what cost them the North Texas game to a certain extent last year, was North Texas was really able to spread Purdue out, drive from every position. And I know I was just talking about the centers, but now I'm talking across the board here. I don't know if Yale's going to have that ability to do that. But that being said, guys who have made 2 threes all year, given the right matchup, could make 3 tomorrow for all I know. It's not like it would be the first time it's happened to Purdue this year. But I think Purdue's big guys are going to have to be really careful because they're going to have a lot of guys coming at them. They're not going to be getting guarded by Joey Brunk anymore, where you can just kind of bang into him, spin off him, and whatever else. It's going to be more like bang into him, hope you don't get called for a charge, and then hope you don't trip over him, that kind of thing. So assuming that Zach Edey and Travion Williams, they just roll the balls out here, and both of those guys get 20 and 10 or whatever, or 35 and 20 between them or whatever. I think it's possible, but I think they have to go out and do it. I thought one of the hidden things of the Iowa game in the Big Ten tournament, was Zach Edey and Travion Williams go 9 and 19 between them. It's not good enough. When they're playing small, you're playing big, and you need to beat threes with twos. Now, Keegan Murray didn't really kill you either. He got his 19, but it took him 16 shots. Chris Murray made some plays. I can't remember what he got. But when you're having to take twos at a higher percentage than they're making threes, that's where you need those guys to at least be at their percentages, if not well above their percentages, because what they're guarding you with is not up to the task, because they're playing small, you're playing big. This is one of those deals where I think those guys, 5 of 11 or whatever for either of those guys, isn't good enough. Now, every game's different. I'm kind of generalizing here, but I think those guys need to be highly efficient, but also they need to make all the right decisions in terms of passing out of that stuff. And that's hard to prepare for when you don't know what someone's going to do. You have no frame of reference whatsoever on what Yale's going to do in a situation like this. Keep in mind, Yale has very little frame of reference either on what Purdue is going to do against the matchups that Yale presents. But my point is, on a short scout, I think that really helps Purdue, because Purdue's got so many things that are hard to prepare for. But it does go both ways, because Purdue is going to have to adjust on the fly to things that they're only finding out about, for the first time. That being said, I don't know what's left under the sun for people to do against Zach Edey or Travion Williams. So I'm figuring there's really nothing Yale can do that can really be anything mind-blowing for either of those guys. One of the stories of this tournament for Purdue is going to be how these games are called, because if they call every single foul, which they won't, but if they call every single foul and things that qualify as fouls, so that Zach Edey hasn't been getting calls on all year long, are other team centers out at like the first media timeout because they've got 3 fouls already? I have a hard time seeing that. But you never know. You never know how they're going to do this. But I think that's a big deal for Purdue. Is these referees have never officiated in most cases, a Zach-Edey. So they're either going to give him every call, or when he backs into a guy and that guy explodes, that can go both ways. That can also get Zach-Edey too, because the shock and awe of the Yale player literally exploding because Zach-Edey just basically sat on him might get you some calls going against you too. So how this all plays out from an officiating perspective is really going to be interesting and really important to Purdue's success. That being said, if Purdue gets the calls it needs to make its free throws. That's one of Purdue's great inefficiencies. I wrote about that on our site yesterday, is how many little inefficiencies are kind of baked into Purdue's complexion this year, and closing off some of those inefficiencies can be a really positive step in the right direction for Purdue playing its best basketball when it matters the most. I think that, on top of the centers and the advantages in the post, I think, obviously guards win in March because they have the ball in their hands every single play. So they're like a pitcher in baseball. They influence every play. A quarterback in football, the ball's in their hands every play. So guards matter a little bit more in March. And that's why this is Jaden Ivey time now. This is, his time to be the best version of himself he can be. And you've seen it all year long. You've also seen periodic little dips in the context of the unbelievable standard that kid has to live up to for a variety of reasons. One, because people like you are following it, because people like me are talking about it, but also because the people who are going to make him a millionaire are scrutinizing every little thing he does, like the Zapruder film. So there's a lot of pressure on that kid this March. I shouldn't call them kids as much as I do, but I'm 44, they're 21, they're kids. Anyway, I think if Purdue gets the very best and the most consistent of Jaden Ivey, the best decision-making version of Jaden Ivey the rest of this month, anything is possible in terms of what Purdue can do. Everything's on the table. If not, and if Purdue across the board, not just Jaden Ivey, but everybody, if they turn the ball over like they did during the season, anything's possible. Anything is possible. The range of outcomes on this team is infinite. It's both ends of the spectrum. I have a really hard time seeing Purdue come out here and have another spell of turnovers tomorrow against Yale, but I had a really hard time seeing it happening in a championship situation too against Iowa in the Big Ten tournament title game. I thought it was out of their system. It was not. So all you can ask if you're Matt Painter is, guys, just you got to do it. You got to be conscious of it. You got to be careful. You got to make good decisions. To his end, when it starts, get it addressed. Get that timeout called. Get them together. Tell them they're fine. Tell them to chill. About to break into a scene in Pulp Fiction. Never mind. Anyway, the turnovers are virtually all that matters for Purdue. Now, I just sat here and I talked about big guys and matchups and big guys versus small ball, Jaden Ivey's importance. Turnovers are virtually all that matters, because that is the first step. That is the difference between Purdue playing as well as it can and being very beatable. And the first step is to get yourself in a place where you're the very best you can be. Then you find out if you're good enough. But without that piece in place, you're not going to put your best foot forward here, and you're never going to know how you would have stacked up with, Kentucky or Baylor or Gonzaga down the line or whoever. But for Purdue, one game at a time. I know I just demonized the cliches that I just had crammed down my throat or into my ears, whatever, all day long. One game at a time. You have to take care of the basketball against Yale. If you're able to do that and beat Yale, you have to take care of the basketball against either Texas or Virginia Tech. If you're able to do that, if you're able to beat whichever team that may be, then you have to take care of the basketball against whoever, and then whoever, and then whoever, and then whoever, or else You were going right back down 94 here. Doesn't make any sense because I just talked about the second and third weekends, and they're not going to be here in Milwaukee. Anyway, I think you get my point. Purdue can't turn the ball over. Breaking news, everyone. So I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to talk about here. I really don't have anything else. So I guess I'll leave it there. Once again, doesn't matter the venue, doesn't matter the competitive environment I'm covering. You can always count on me to stick the landing on these videos. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials, from Pfizer Forum here in the only major American city to have ever elected 3 socialist mayors, Milwaukee. This is Brian Neubert for goldenblack.com. Thank you, everyone. I did not shout any sponsors because I didn't want to run afoul of the NCAA sponsorship monster. So, thanks, everybody.